He's never believed all the superstitious stories about the place, no matter how creepy and empty it might have been. A building is still just a building, isn't it? But now, watching in abject horror as the foggy split jaw of the specter cackled maniacally, seeing it floating closer, the investigator starts to reconsider his belief. Maybe there is such a thing as ghosts. But before I go any further, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder. Attention all vehicle combat enthusiasts. If you're like me and go crazy for hyper-accurate details, then War Thunder is the game for you. There's over 2,000 lovingly rendered tanks, planes, helicopters, and even naval ships. And those details aren't just for show. They translate into an incredibly authentic combat scenario with an authentic damage model. Vehicles don't just have hit points, they endure genuine wear and tear, and with the damage X-ray, you can see the real-time destruction unfold. You can make the vehicles your own too, with tons of customization options, including camos, historical decals, as well as 3D add-ons like equipment or plants. Match types, you ask? Your choice. Dive into quick action bouts or immerse yourself in strategic, realistic PvP encounters. But no matter which you choose, you'll be treated to stunning 4K visuals, complete with genuine soundscapes that pull you right into the action. And in War Thunder, even the controls are innovative. No need for an elaborate HOTAS setup to fly a plane. All you need is a keyboard and mouse to become an ace with their intuitive mouse aim mode. So jump into the action with War Thunder right now. Available now on PC, PlayStation 5, or Xbox X and S, or the previous console generation. And for new players who use my special link in the description, you'll get a large bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, premium account, an exclusive 3D decorator for your vehicles, and much, much more. But it's available for a limited time only, so don't wait. It all starts the way most cases do, with a client and a sad story. By now, the investigator has long since become accustomed to how things play out. Someone whose case has been thrown out by the cops, left unsolved and without a resolution, they find themselves turning to him, and his most recent client is much the same. It's a missing persons case. The police have already given up the search for the client's son and a close friend, who have both vanished under mysterious circumstances, with the client in tears saying she just wants to know if her son is alive or not. The investigator agrees to take on the case. He tells her he'll do what he can, even if the answer he winds up uncovering isn't the one that brings happiness. It could at least provide some closure. The client hands over her son's computer, and it doesn't take long for the investigator to happen across his first lead. As it turns out, the son runs a channel right here on YouTube. The investigator takes a closer look. It seems to be dedicated to discussing and uncovering the existence of the paranormal. Spirits, seances, Sasquatches, trying to decipher how much of it is real and what are just flat-out stories. The investigator shakes his head and sighs. He's never been the superstitious type. Ghosts and gremlins were usually just myths that distract from the very real wrongdoings in the world. But then he notices something, a recurring series of videos on the YouTuber's channel. Each video has a similar format. He and a cameraman venture to a rundown building that is allegedly haunted and then proceed to stay the night there or try to commune with spirits. While the jury was still out on a ghostly abduction, the investigator feels certain that the YouTuber must have been out filming another of these paranormal explorations on the night he and his cameraman went missing. And sure enough, the investigator doesn't have to look far to be proven right. There's a log of direct messages between the YouTuber and the cameraman discussing ideas for videos that might potentially boost their views and engagement. The YouTuber points out that videos about haunted prisons tend to bring in an interested audience, and the cameraman discovers the location of an abandoned Federal Penitentiary after some research. They both agree to head there and plan to film a new video when they do. There's even an address in their chat log, and they even arrange to meet on the same night their disappearance would take place. So the investigator gets in his car and makes the drive towards the location. By the time he arrives, it's already dark out. Haunted or not, the sight of the desolate prison complex at night even gives the investigator the creeps. He ventures inside, the echo of his boots on the ground cutting through the eerie silence. Each step is slow and carefully placed to avoid stepping or tripping over any hazards that might be strewn about on the ground, but also so the investigator can cover every corner of the abandoned Federal Penitentiary. After all, anywhere around could be clues to the mysterious disappearances. He knows he probably won't get lucky and stumble upon both the YouTuber and the cameraman, alive but just trapped somewhere in the empty prison. But then, he hears a sudden sound. It almost sounds like a voice, a person screaming. The investigator looks around, stopping and waiting to see if he hears it again. A few moments pass, and nothing but the silence of the old prison, with the occasional breeze from outside its old walls. Might have just been the wind playing tricks on him, the investigator rationalizes to himself, before noticing that the hairs on his neck are all standing to attention. He quietly scolds himself for getting spooked at nothing. He'd be getting scared of his own shadow next. He ventures further into the abandoned penitentiary, passing vacant cells that once would have housed thieves and murderers. It makes the investigator wonder, as he quietly walks on, if anyone he ever got arrested made it to this prison. He's not broken many cases that involve violent crimes, but a very select few from his career spring to mind. Not every case he looks into has a simple, straightforward answer, and sometimes a missing person isn't just someone that skipped town or come out to a creepy old prison to film a YouTube video. As the investigator walks carefully into a cell block in the deepest part of the prison, he almost trips. Something is at his feet, its weight shifting as his boot knocks against it. Taking a closer look, the investigator reaches towards the ground to retrieve the object. His fingertips brush up against it, and he picks it up. It's a camera. And not a cheap camcorder either, a far more impressive piece of equipment than an average person would own, and certainly one too expensive for its owner to just leave it lying around. It looks like a miniaturized television studio camera, complete with a microphone and a small LCD screen that flips out of its side. Fairly confident that this belonged to the missing cameraman, the investigator turns the device on, not realizing how grave of a mistake he's just made. The camera's screen blinks to life, with an icon in the corner displaying how much charge the battery has left. Only a quarter. The investigator realizes he needs to get as many answers as he can from this thing, and fast. He hits play on one of the most recently recorded clips, and the display presents him with footage of the YouTuber. The video's timestamp confirms it's from the fateful night of the untimely disappearance, and in it, the YouTuber is excitedly welcoming his audience to the abandoned Federal Penitentiary. He explains that the prison has long been rumored to be haunted, and that he and the cameraman are going to determine if the rumors of ghosts in the cells are true. The clip cuts, and the next starts playing automatically. Most of them are brief B-roll shots taken by the cameraman, showing the creepy, unsettling atmosphere of the vacant prison. Bars without anyone behind them, the moon visible through the decaying ceiling, and other clips intended to be edited into a longer video. There are takes of the YouTuber as he tries to explain the history of the haunted prison, only to trip up his words, being forced to start again. It's all rough, imperfect, and evidently left unfinished. Not much of note takes place, until the YouTuber and his cameraman reach the spot where the investigator would inevitably find the discarded video camera. On screen, the YouTuber explains that they're standing in the death row block, the place where convicts were sent while awaiting their executions. As he's recounting exactly how many met their deaths, calling this particular block the most haunted in the whole prison, a sudden noise distracts the YouTuber and the cameraman filming. They wander deeper into the cell block until they come across a foreboding room with faded lettering over the doorway. The camera's microphone picks up the buzzing of electricity coming from the other side, and the pair venture through to a grim sight awaiting them on the other side. The YouTuber is in awe, perhaps thinking of all the views it will garner from his morbidly fixated subscribers. The cameraman doesn't appear on screen, but his reaction is easy to gauge from what he says as they step into the room. He's horrified. The gravity of what the place is and what it was built and used for hitting him at once, and it isn't hard to see why. The pair are standing in the execution chamber. In the middle of the room is an old chair with worn leather straps on the armrests and the front two legs. A rusted metal apparatus is affixed to the top and back of it too, giving a clear indication that this isn't exactly a comfy recliner. It's an electric chair. Of course, this doesn't stop the YouTuber from excitedly sitting in it, slipping his hands through the straps, and then shaking erratically. He's pretending to be electrocuted. The cameraman urges him to stop, making it known how distasteful he finds the mocking action. But moments later, both of their attention is suddenly drawn to the back wall of the chamber. Something is dripping on the wall. Catching the low light from the video camera and the flashlight on the YouTuber's cell phone, the camera pans closer, only for the cameraman holding it to recoil in shock as he sees what's on the wall. It's blood. Fresh blood. Still wet. He panics and starts accusing the YouTuber of arriving early to smear fake blood on the wall as some kind of prank. all to add to the horror factor of the video by making the cameraman believe it to be real. But the YouTuber insists he'd done nothing of the sort. They take another look at the bloody mess on the wall. It looks like a diagram of some kind that someone has put great effort into painting on the back wall of the execution chamber. Immediately next comes a flood of frightened questions from the cameraman. If it's real, then whose blood is it? Why would someone do something like this? And were they even safe anymore? The YouTuber doesn't answer. The color has drained from his face as he stares up at where the ceiling meets the top of the wall. He's frozen to the spot. All of his bravado and exaggerated, ostentatious presenter persona has fallen away, leaving only one real thing: fear. The cameraman whips the video camera's lens to the spot where the YouTuber is looking. Then he sees it for himself. The seam where the highest point of the wall connects to the ceiling is bleeding. Long crimson drops start to rapidly spill from the wall and cause the pair to turn heel and run out of the execution chamber. Back out in the death row block of the abandoned Federal Penitentiary, the YouTuber and the cameraman go into a full-blown panic. Neither one of them can believe what they've seen. The idea that someone else was pranking them is quickly thrown out. Nobody else knows they were coming here, and the blood seems too authentic. The YouTuber is familiar with using fake blood for cheap scares in videos. It's hard to fake the metallic smell of the real thing. Suddenly, a loud cacophony erupts from nearby. It's deafening, the clanging of metal on metal. The cameraman whips the lens over to the cells. Despite being abandoned, Death Row worryingly seems more alive than ever. The rusted doors to the cells are swinging open and shut rapidly, crashing as they slam completely of their own accord. The pair begin to run back the way they came, towards the entrance of the cell block. The YouTuber trips, but as the cameraman turns back to look at him, something inexplicable is happening. He's being dragged back across the floor, like someone is pulling him by the ankle, his hands desperately clawing for something to grip onto in order to save himself. In a second, the YouTuber is gone, dragged screaming into the shadows. The cameraman turns to run again, when something causes the camera to tumble to the ground. Through the tiny screen, the investigator hears the dying screams of the cameraman, while only his shoes are in frame. He hits pause on the footage and notices the timestamp, just over 20 minutes. Combined with the duration of the previous clips, he deduces that the pair were only inside the prison for around half an hour. As to what happened to them, that question still perplexes him. A wild animal attack seems possible, but that doesn't explain the bizarre bleeding walls in the execution chamber. A troubled thought suddenly causes the investigator to check his watch. He's been there for just over 25 minutes himself. A figure has appeared in front of him while he's been distracted. The investigator thinks it's a trick of the light, until he sees, or rather, doesn't see, the legs. The figure is hovering off the ground, missing their legs. Can't be. Surely it couldn't be an actual... It floats closer, and that's when he sees the same grotesque face he's seen before. He still remembers the day they caught the killer. His mugshot was printed in every newspaper. His scarred, twisted jaw reminds the world of his crimes, and now, so does his ghost. There's something sharp and pointed in its hand as it gets closer, a rudimentary blade, and it's the only thing the investigator sees as the killer claims yet another victim. Exploring any abandoned building in the pursuit of internet virality is usually not an advisable course of action, even less so when that building happens to be SCP-450, the abandoned Federal Penitentiary. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking that there's nothing inherently dangerous about a building. Naturally, after so many years of neglect, it has seen better days. Much of the now empty prison is in a pretty dire state of disrepair, and collapsing masonry to the head can prove to be fatal if you're standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, we all know it wasn't designed to fall into such disuse. Things often decay with time, left to rot like a prisoner in a cell. Structural hazards aside, it might seem on the surface like there's nothing unusual about the penitentiary itself. Naturally, any empty building becomes a little creepy when it's been abandoned for so long, particularly after dark, and especially in a place that was once designed to be filled with inmates and guards. And while it might be true that the empty building itself doesn't pose much of a threat, nobody said SCP-450 was empty. Some of the prisoners that were remanded there during its heyday were no doubt made to serve life sentences for heinous crimes, and some of them are still serving their sentences from beyond the grave. The SCP Foundation's extensive exploration into the abandoned Federal Penitentiary has determined a number of factors relating to its anomalous properties. For one, the encounters with supernatural phenomena are confined to only one particular cell block of the entire prison. Sounds at least a little bit more manageable, doesn't it? After all, at least if you were able to venture around other parts of the prison, then the only creepy part would be how run down and vacant the place is. But over on death row, things are far, far creepier. It seems only fitting that the most haunted area of SCP-450 is the portion of the prison where inmates were held before execution. These cells are those that were once reserved for the most diabolical criminals, who were deemed so dangerous and guilty of such horrific crimes that they were sentenced to death. And it seems that for some of them, this solution wasn't as permanent as you might think. Traversing from the entrance of SCP-450 into the cell block, one will reach the execution chamber just over 160 meters away. Much like the rest of the place, this too hasn't seen much use in a long time, although the sounds you might hear inside might fool you into thinking otherwise. Occasionally, the sounds of crackling sparks, deadly voltages of electricity will ring out, along with the long-forgotten screams of those condemned to death by the electric chair. Upon closer inspection, those brave or foolish enough to venture into the abandoned Federal Penitentiary will notice a pattern on the wall, directly behind the old electric chair. What might look like just a complex inscription is, in actuality, a map of the entire prison, and it's drawn in blood. SCP Foundation researchers have discovered that this map has a tendency to degrade over time, thanks to the amount of natural wear and tear SCP-450 has undergone. For that reason, and perhaps so the inmates can find their way around, the bloody diagram is regularly maintained and repainted when needed. Speaking of the inmates, you can surely imagine what they must have been like while they were still alive in order to be held on death row. Now try to picture how much worse they are after having been executed. Descriptions of the numerous entities inhabiting SCP-450 are scarce, and perhaps that's for the better if you happen to be faint of heart. However, one thing the Foundation knows for sure is that they are all hostile. An encounter with any one of the spectral prisoners is inevitably fatal. The Foundation is able to determine a few specific criteria that will cause one of the ghostly convicts to appear. If one or more of these is not followed, then it will lead to a much quicker death sentence than those once served at SCP-450. First, using any other entrance to gain access to the haunted cell block other than the main door. That means no trying to get there by doubling back through empty corridors and taking shortcuts up stairwells. And while you're at it, it's best to keep your movements slow and steady. Traveling through SCP-450 at a speed faster than 0.25 meters per second will attract some unwanted and undead attention. Any personnel the Foundation tasks with performing maintenance within the abandoned Federal Penitentiary need to follow specific instructions in order to make it in and out in one piece. By walking silently at a reduced pace, it takes them approximately 11 minutes to make it from the main entrance of Death Row to the execution chamber. But they will need to account for the journey back, too. Anyone present inside the cell block for longer than 25 minutes at a time will invariably attract the presence of the prisoners. With the journey taking 11 minutes both ways, that leaves personnel with only 3 minutes to repaint the blood-soaked map and make it back out to safety in enough time. And trying to rush back is hardly advisable. The faster you move, the louder your footsteps are likely to be, and sound seems to be yet another thing the infernal inmates are drawn to. Noises louder than 25 decibels are known to attract them, as is operating any electronic devices and returning to SCP-450 more than once every 24 hours. Of course, it's hardly smooth sailing for those that the Foundation does send into the abandoned Federal Penitentiary. Personnel will often report similar experiences being inside the haunted cell block. They will frequently experience hallucinations of spectral, translucent figures. Often, some of these poltergeist prisoners will appear clearer than others, and some still look more human than others too. Auditory hallucinations are also recurringly experienced by those who visit SCP-450, many being a cacophony of imprisoned screams, the desperate cries of those who are still trapped in the prison, now with no guards around ordering them to keep quiet after lights out. But the Foundation likes to assure its staff that anything they experience within SCP-450 is perfectly normal. There's no cause for concern, no matter how many spectral voices one might hear. If the walls start to bleed, don't worry about it. And if personnel encounter any dead, rotting remains, they are advised not to investigate for their own safety. It certainly seems that while SCP-450 no longer houses any living convicts, the abandoned Federal Penitentiary is still very much in active use when it comes to keeping its poltergeist population imprisoned. Then again, the Foundation can only really keep the doors locked and occasionally head into SCP-450 for maintenance. Anyone who accidentally enters the building, be they civilians or personnel, are to be considered lost, and no attempts at rescue are to be made under any circumstances. It seems that these days the inmates are running the penitentiary. Thank you again to War Thunder for sponsoring my video. Download it now by clicking the link in the description and get a large bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, premium account, an exclusive 3D decorator for your vehicles, and much more. But remember, it's only available for a limited time. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-280, Eyes in the Dark.